All right, for this session, it's an introduction to SketchUp. So this will be the first time using SketchUp. So I will go ahead and launch SketchUp by double clicking the icon here. And if it's the first time you're using SketchUp, sometimes it does take a bit of time to load. So you do have to be somewhat patient. And I believe I tested this already before. It did launch, so it should not go. I mean, it should go a little bit quicker. Shouldn't take as long. But if it does, I'm doing this real time so that you can see, there's nothing wrong with your computers. This is just the nature of SketchUp loading for the first time. So I'm getting my welcome to SketchUp screen. It tells me that a new version is available. I'm not going to download that at all. I'm going to leave this alone. So I'm just going to say skip this version or remind me later. Either one is fine. So I'm just going to go skip, and then it should launch me into the start screen here for SketchUp. And I don't want to learn more about what's new. I'm just going to, let's see, click away from that and actually just click over here where it says start modeling. So give that a click. And you should arrive at a screen like this. So this is the startup screen. You'll see this every time you start SketchUp. And the template that we're going to be using is the one called Architectural Inches. So all you have to do is just give that one click. And when you do that, it's going to load the user interface. And again, just give this a moment to fully load. And we'll be making some adjustments to the interface in just a moment. I get a little impatient, so I'm just going to give this a click. Tells me it's not responding, which means that something is going on, it's just not happening fast enough. All right. So this is what the interface will look like when you launch it for the first time. And you do have to customize it. So the toolbars here that are going to open up, we're not going to be using these. So this Scan Essentials, I'm going to close that. There's something here called V-Ray for SketchUp. Unless you're on a Premiere plan, you cannot use V-Ray. V-Ray is a rendering engine, so we do not have access to that. So I'm just going to close this out. And then there's other toolbars related to V-Ray. And V-Ray is a third-party rendering software. There are others. SketchUp does not render at all, but it does have some nice features, and we'll get into those much later. So whatever toolbars open up that say V-Ray, you just close out of them. All right. And you're going to have one toolbar at the top here, which you'll keep open at all times. You have a default tray on the side, and you can click and drag and minimize it just a little bit. That's about as far as it will go, and that's fine. If you do not see this default tray, then you should be able to come up to Window over where it says Default Tray, and it will you'll be able to turn it on. So for example, I'll close mine out on purpose like this, so it's closed out. So I'll go to Window, Default Tray, and I'll say Show Tray. So you want to turn that on. And you can collapse these sections if you want to. So you have all these sections open. If any of you are interested, there's also this instructor tab that you can keep open. And anytime you're using tools, it'll kind of guide you through it. So it is helpful if you want to see that. I like to keep entity info open at all times. It's like seeing the properties of the objects here. And then we'll be using the other categories as well as we move on. All right, so you have the toolbar at the top, and then what you'll need to do is open up a couple more toolbars. So move your cursor over along the top, and then simply right click in an empty area like this. And when you give it a right click, you'll see there are check marks over or next to the tabs that are open. So the one that I want you to have open is the large tool set. So you give that a click. And the large tool set is nice because you have all of the icons here visible. And you'll see that there are some redundant icons. So for example, the line tool here is also repeated up there. And then there's a drop down on this one that says line and also freehand, which you're seeing the freehand option here. So this expands them a little bit. Other toolbars to open, I will right click and I am going to select, which one is it that I want? I'm going to select styles. I'm going to have that open. And right now I'm just going to click and drag it down. Just going to float it here so you can see it. So styles. And then I'm also going to right click. And eventually I want to use solid tools. Not yet, but I'll go ahead and have that one available to me as well. I'm just going to float them here so you can see them. And then what other tools do I want right now? I'm just checking. I don't remember if I want measurements, but doesn't look like that did anything, and that's all right. Let me right click. I'll turn it off. Right click again. Views. Okay, so let me move this over here. All right, so these are the toolbars that I've opened up. So styles, solid tools, and views. They'll come in handy. Now, I like to place them all along the top. So I'm going to take styles. I'm going to click and drag it up here next to the other one. So I'm just going to move it over to the right and then bring it up and then park it next to it like that and release. I'll do the same thing with solid tools and with views. Eventually, I might have more toolbars and it might come down to a second row, but for now, this will do. All right, that sets up the user interface. And if I open up any more, I will certainly let you know. All right, talking about the interface now, you'll notice at the bottom left, you'll see where it gives you prompts. So keep an eye on the text here. Notice how it says click or drag to select objects, shift equals add, subtract, control, and so on. We haven't done anything yet, so that's just basically sitting down there. But if I were to click on line, for example, so this is my line tool. If I click on it, you'll see down at the bottom where it says click to set first endpoint. And then arrow keys, it's going to lock our direction. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but always pay attention to this. And then if I go to draw a rectangle, you'll see it says click to select the first corner. So in both instances here, you'll also see down in the lower right-hand corner, it says dimensions. So we'll be able to input dimensions directly, and you don't need to click in that dimensions box. You'll just go ahead and type in dimensions and it will take the dimensions. So for example, if I click on line here for a second and I just give one click, you'll notice where it says length. And I can actually type a length, an exact length, let's say 3 feet for now. And I'm not moving my cursor. I'm just typing 3. And notice how the length changes. And I want that to be 3 feet. And then I enter and it will draw a line that's 3 feet in length. So it's important to keep an eye on that bottom part of the screen. So I'll go ahead and hit the escape key now. I just wanted to show that to you. And I'll go ahead and click on edit, undo, draw line. And then there is no enter. If I hit the escape key, it doesn't take that tool away. If I hit enter, it also doesn't go away. You have to use the space bar. When you tap space bar, then you're back to the selection tool and you can go ahead and move on with the next command that you'd like to enter. So you'll be using the space bar a bit and you'll hear me say, tap the space bar just so that you're aware of it. There are also keyboard shortcuts, and SketchUp does provide a list of those, but I will show them to you on the screen here as well when I start using them. And I will use the toolbars over here, but you'll also see me just call out, for example, line. I know the keyboard shortcut for that is L. So I just type L and I get going, drawing lines. And then I'll tap the space bar to make that go away. So just like with AutoCAD, where you have the command aliases, shortcuts, the same thing here with SketchUp for most of the tools. Not all of them, but majority of them, the common ones. All right, so before we start drawing anything, I just want you to get a nice feel for the interface and how you will pan and zoom. And now that we are in 3D space, how you're going to orbit. So this figure, by the way, is just a simple 2D figure, and it is provided every time SketchUp comes out with a new release, it's a different figure. But it's provided to help us with scale and proportion. So I'm going to take advantage of that figure being there, and then I'm just going to start to move around the screen a little bit. So to zoom in and out, it's just simply using the middle wheel button and rolling it up to zoom in, and then rolling it down to zoom out. And I can keep zooming out. And this space also extends infinitely. So that's just zooming in and out. Now, in SketchUp, we also then need to pan. So to pan around, and this is tricky because we're used to using in AutoCAD, panning using the middle wheel mouse button. But in this case, if I click on it, it's going to send me into an orbit mode. So this is just going to orbit me around my objects. So in order to pan, you have to hold down the Shift key and then click and drag the wheel mouse to pan. And then let go of the Shift and let go of the wheel mouse. And then I'll just go ahead back over here and I'll click and drag so I can orbit like that. All right. A little bit more on the interface before we draw anything. You see on the screen, you have 3 lines, and these are the axis in SketchUp. So this red axis right here, well, first of all, where they all meet, this is basically that point of origin. That's that 0, 0 starting point, similar to what you have in AutoCAD and other programs. That's an origin point. And you'll see how the line is red moving away from that point, and then it's dashed as it moves in the opposite direction, which is the negative direction. So this is more or less the x-axis, but SketchUp excuse me, this is the red axis, but it's the x-axis, but SketchUp always refers to it as the red axis. Over here along green, that's our y-axis, but in SketchUp, this is green axis. And then what is new for us now that we're starting to move into 3D is the z-axis, which for SketchUp, it's blue. So those are the color-coded visual guides that we have for us so that we know where we're drawing and in what direction. So let's do this just to get started. Go ahead and either click on the line command, line icon, or type L, either one. And it's going to show you the pencil on the screen, which means you're ready to start drawing lines. Now, you could, if you want, just come real close to the origin here and notice how it shows us a pointer. So it's ready to snap. I'm not going to draw anything there yet. I just wanted you to see that you could, if you wanted to, start there. But I'd like for you to start somewhere in this general area and just basically give it one click, and it'll start to give the rubber banding effect. And if I keep moving the cursor around, you're going to see that it turns red in some cases. In other cases, it's going to turn green. And sometimes I can get it to turn blue. So it's basically locking into that axis, but I'm not always sure if it will or if it won't. And as a beginner of SketchUp, I always tell students, to really control the axis that you want to use, go ahead and toggle your arrow keys. So right now, I just have my cursor sitting right there, but I'm going to toggle my right arrow key. I'm going to tap it. Tapping the right arrow key once will now constrain to the red axis. No matter what I do, no matter where I move my cursor, I'm locked into red axis. So for me, the mnemonic, how I remember this is that red starts with R. Right arrow key starts with R. So red and right, that's my way of remembering this. So let's say I don't want to stay locked into the red axis, just tap the right arrow key again, and it's going to toggle that off. So you're no longer locked in. If I want to lock into the green axis, that's going to be the left arrow key. So left arrow key toggles me or locks me into the green axis. And then I'll tap it again and I'm out. And then finally, if I want to constrain to the blue axis, which is going up, that's how I remember it. If I want to go straight up, then that's the up arrow key. So I tap the up arrow key on my keyboard, and now I'm constraining to the Z direction or the blue axis. So that's how I can really stay constrained. And I'll tap that again to toggle that grid or that axis off. All right, let me go ahead and tap the escape key because I don't want to draw a line. And then I'm going to tap the space bar, which brings me back to my screen here. All right, so let's go ahead and practice drawing. And I'll start with just keeping it very simple and straightforward right now, and then we'll get into some precision drawing. So for starters, let's go ahead and just click where go back to the line, click on line or type L, and then start anywhere on the screen and just give it one click. And then let's constrain to the red axis. So tap the right arrow key. And it doesn't matter how long you make this line right now. We'll keep it straightforward and then we'll be a little more precise later. So click anywhere on the screen now, like here, for example, and you've now drawn a line. And notice how it wants to keep drawing lines. And what I'd like to do now is constrain to green axis. So tap the left arrow key. And when I tap the left arrow key, notice how I can go pretty far. And you don't need to go too far. Right here is a good enough distance, so give that one click. And now I've drawn two lines. And in order for me to get a surface here, I need to finish this off. So I'd like to bring my line across along red, and I want to constrain to red. So I'm going to tap the the right arrow key, and that constrains to red. And now what's really nice is I can come over here to this endpoint, and it finds the endpoint, and it tells me it's constraining on line from point. So all I have to do is give it a click, and it's going to match that length. And then to finish this off, I'll just go ahead and click right here on this endpoint. And when I do that, go ahead and tap the space bar now, and you'll see that you have a surface. And now go ahead and orbit about that surface. And you'll see it's a dark gray, and you can even go underneath like this. So you are in 3D space now. And I'm just going to hold down my shift key and click and drag my wheel mouse so I can center this on the screen like that, and then continue. So what you have here in SketchUp is a surface. And if I give it one click, you see how it highlights the surface. And this surface was made possible by constructing 4 edges, but I could have gotten away with it by constructing just 3 edges. So it creates this plane. So I'm going to click off of that so it's not highlighted. So to model in SketchUp, you need to start with the surface and then you have to push-pull it. So with nothing highlighted, I'm going to come over here to my tools, and it's going to be this icon right here. This is push-pull. Click on that. And when you click on push-pull, you'll notice at the bottom left, it says click to select the face that you want to push pull. So if you move your cursor over on top of the face, notice how it's already highlighting it. So give it one click, and then move your cursor up. If you move it down, it'll create a 3D object to the bottom. But go ahead and bring it up, and it doesn't matter what height. And I'll just stop mine right here, and I'll go ahead and give that a click. And notice how it's created that 3D object. And I'm still in my push-pull mode, so if I wanted to, I can go ahead and click on this face and actually pull it out. I can click on this face and push it in or pull it out. And I give it a click, and it stops there, and then I can just do the same thing at the top. So I just want you to see how this push-pull works. And then when you're all done creating that solid object, go ahead and tap the space bar. And that takes you out of the command, and we're back to the selection tool, the pointer. And now, before we do anything else, now's a really good time to practice panning, zooming, and orbiting. So what I'd like you to do is a full 360-degree around the object. So it doesn't matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise. Try to get yourself to orbit around the object and that figure. And you may need to pan a little bit. You'll orbit. So keep your finger over that shift key so that you're ready to click on it if you need to pan. But I'm just simply orbiting right now. And I'll zoom out a little bit. And now I'm going to pan. And then I'm going to orbit. And I'm just going to come under the, to see the bottom here. And then I'll come right back up. Keep panning. Sorry, keep orbiting like that. And then I'm going to hold down my shift key so that I can then click and drag the wheel mouse and position this more or less in the center of the screen. So this is a good way to practice navigating your 3D space. And give yourself time. It is critical. It's very, very, very important that you know how to orbit, how to pan, and how to zoom so that you can construct your models. Okay, next thing I want to show you before I do anything else is I'm going to click on this face. So I have faces, and then I have these edges. This is a face, a surface. Either one of the terms is applicable. But I just clicked on it, and I'm going to tap the delete key. You don't have to do this because I want you to see the inside. It's hollow. Usually, when you think of 3D objects, well, at least when I do, I think of them as like a piece of clay or stick of butter, where it's solid on the inside if I were to cut through it. But with SketchUp, it's hollow on the inside. It's like taking cards or taking paper and just putting 6 sheets of paper together. The edges are touching and hollow on the inside, but from the outside, it looks like it's a solid object. That's just how SketchUp works. And then the other thing I did here, the reason I took that face away is because I want you to see that on the inside, there's a color to that surface, and it's a gray, like a cool gray color. You'll see that. But then on the outside, it's this white color. So it doesn't matter if you're seeing the gray or the white. Just know that for SketchUp, there are always going to be 2 sides to these faces, to these surfaces. There's an inside and an outside. If you ever see the outside on one of these faces here, it's okay because all you have to do is click on it and then you right click it and then you can reverse the face. I'm going to do this now just to show you. When I click reverse face, notice you see how it changed color? And now if I go to the inside, now that inside is that white color. So just showing that to you for now. It happens every now and then you'll just select it, right click it, and reverse the face like that. All right, so now on the inside, There's the space, but I want to cover it back up. So to do that in SketchUp, it's really nice. I can go ahead and type L for the line command, and I click on any endpoint, and then I'll pick another endpoint. And as soon as I do that, SketchUp detects that there were already other edges there, so it's just closing it up. And then I'll tap the escape key, and then I'll tap the space bar, just in case I was in the middle of drawing a line. So space bar takes me right back. Now, before I continue, I do want you to see that when I click on a surface, you'll see up here the entity info. It's showing me the two faces here. It's showing me a tag. We're currently untagged. This is like drawing on layer 0 if we were using AutoCAD. And then it shows me the area of that surface. I'll go ahead and click off of it. I just wanted you to see that. All right. And then let's do this before we move on. I'm going to pan over like this. And I want you to see the nice thing about SketchUp here is I can type L, so I can start drawing a line. And then I'm just going to float it over here until it finds the midpoint. There's the midpoint. So it snaps to the midpoint. I give that a click, and then I'm going to bring my line straight down until it finds this midpoint. And I give that a click. And then from here, notice how I'm still in the line command, but what I'd like to do is I'd like to push pull one of these two surfaces now. So I'm just going to go ahead and type P for push pull. And because I drew that line, it has now separated that one surface into two separate ones. So I'm going to click here, one click, and then I'm going to pull it out like this. So this is really nice with SketchUp. It's just allowing me to make these changes really quick. So I'll give that a click. And then I could tap the space bar and then type L for line, but I'm just going to skip the space bar and I'll just go straight and type L. And when I type L, now I'm going to draw a line from this endpoint over to the diagonal like this. By doing that, I've created two surfaces. I've split it. So now I'm going to type P for push pull, and I can take this surface, click on it, and bring it out. And I can take it past the screen. And then what I could do is I can hold down my shift key and then click and drag my wheel mouse and pan over while I'm in the middle of that command. So now I'm going to click right here, and then I'll tap the space bar. Now, if I want to see everything that I've drawn so far in AutoCAD and in other programs, it's a zoom extents or it's a zoom all. In SketchUp, it's the same thing, but I have to come up here and use the icon, which is the zoom extents icon. There is no shortcut that I'm aware of yet. So I'm going to click on zoom extents, and it shows me everything on the screen, or everything that I've drawn so far on screen. And now I can just zoom out and just orbit and see what I've got so far. So that's an intro to SketchUp. Now, just by separating the space, it works well, but sometimes it may not achieve the results you may want. So for example, if I draw a line from this endpoint over to this endpoint like this, and then type P for push pull, sometimes you may not, well, in this case, I'm getting the result, but sometimes I may not get that because it just doesn't know how to push pull that surface. So I'll just give this a click here. Be all done there. And then let's see if I can push pull this surface. See how this, it doesn't know which way to go because of the edge on this side. So I can't push pull that surface. So I'm going to tap the escape key and I'm going to see if I can push pull this surface, and that one will come out. And then if I come over to this surface and try to push pull that, it doesn't know which way to go. So it doesn't always work, but in general, it does. So just keep that in mind. So I'll go ahead and tap the space bar now. And then the last thing I want to do here is point out another big key concept to SketchUp that is really, really important to understanding if you're going to use SketchUp successfully, and that is making groups. So anytime you make these shapes, these 3D solids, it is so important that you make a group out of them. You'll see why in just a moment. In order to make a group, you have to triple click on any one of the surfaces or any one of the edges. And triple click, it's tricky at first. And if I can demonstrate just by using my hands real quick here for sound effects. So a single click sounds like this. Hope you heard that. So I'll do that again. A single click like that. A double click. And we're all used to double clicks in our programs. So a triple click goes something like this. It's 3 clicks in a row, very fast. No pauses in between. So one more time, triple click. That's how fast it has to be. So I am now going to triple click on any one of the surfaces here, any one of the faces. So triple click. Notice how it selects everything. And if I orbit, you'll see how it's picked everything, even those surfaces on the back. So now that I have all of these surfaces selected, you can see over here how it's telling me under entity info, 38 entities. That includes the surfaces and also the edges. Once you have them selected, then you right click and you come over here to make a group. So click on make group. And then you'll see that it's going to create this boundary showing us that it is a group. And then if I click off of it, nothing is highlighted. And when I click on it, one click only, you'll see how it shows me the whole group. So again, this is a very important, a key concept in SketchUp to understand. And you'll hear me repeat this a lot at the beginning. Like we just made a surface or we made a 3D object here, group it. Triple click, right click, group. And you'll get used to that. All right, and then the last thing I want to point out, which is also very important here, is that once I make a group, you'll come over here and you'll see the entity info. It says it's a solid group, but come down here to where it says volume. When you see a volume, that means that this is a good solid. Now, is there a difference between a good solid and a bad solid? Yes and no. If you're going to be using the solid editing tools like this, the solid tools here, the only way solid editing tools work with solids is that they need to have a volume. Without a volume, SketchUp does not recognize this as a true solid. So there's certain things, certain commands, certain tools that you just cannot execute. So just be mindful of that. Let me just move this up here for a second. I'm going to show you real quick what a solid looks like that doesn't have a volume. So I'm going to zoom in real close here and I'm going to edit this solid. And I'm going to do that by clicking once, shows me that I have it selected, and then double clicking. And when I double click, it shows this boundary box around it. And now what I'm going to do is zoom in real close like this. And I went too far, so give me a second. Yeah, right there is where I want to be. Let me just pan over. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to draw a line. And that line is just going to go from this edge over to this edge. And then I'm going to tap the escape key and space bar. I'm going to click right here and it's highlighting that small surface and I'm going to delete that. And then I'm going to zoom out and click away from my solid. And from far away, it looks like it's a perfect solid. But when I click on it, you'll notice that it does not have a volume anymore because there's an opening there. So it's not completely sealed. So it's not being recognized as a solid. So when we start doing some more modeling here and based on our AutoCAD drawing, when we bring that in, it's important to kind of keep an eye on these groups to make sure that they maintain these volumes. It may not matter at first, but eventually you try to perform certain commands and they may not function right. And it turns out that you might not have a true solid here. So I'll go ahead, head back in there. I'll double click to edit my group. And then I'm simply going to draw a line. And I'm going to take it from here straight down. It closes that out. I type E for erase, and I erase that line. And then I'm going to see if I tap my spacebar and click away. Now, if I click on it, you notice how it has a volume again. So I kind of patched it up there. So it's not that big of a deal, but it certainly does come into play a lot of times when you're trying to do certain things with the model and it's just getting a little frustrating sometimes. So, all right, that's something to keep in mind. All right, let's see what next. All right, so let's see. I'm going to click off of it so it's no longer selected. And let's do the following. For practice here, I'm just going to take this group. I don't need it anymore. If you want to, you can certainly keep it. You can move it off to the side. I'll show you how to do that. You're going to come over and use the Move tool, which is up here, or it's over here in the large tool set, or just simply type M. When you type M, you get the four-way arrow. And you're basically just going to pick it from any endpoint or any corner and then just move it away. And it doesn't have to lock in or constrain to the red or green axis. As long as it's getting moved away, it's fine. So I'll just push that to the side. Or you can delete it. It doesn't matter. I just want to keep drawing in this area now. So I am now going to tap the space bar. And then I want to show you some precision drawing, which is what we will have to do in SketchUp. So I'm going to start by typing L. And then I'm going to start drawing a line. And I'll start at the origin. I'll give that one click. And then I want to constrain to red. And as you begin to use the program, just use the right arrow key. Get comfortable with that. So constrain to the red axis. And then you see that down in the bottom, it's giving a length. And right now it says approximately 12 feet, 5 3/8. So let's move the cursor a little bit further, and it's around 18 feet. So you can see we're going to draw a line that's 20 feet in length. So without touching your mouse, without moving it, leave it right where it is. Just simply type in 20, that gives you 20, and then the foot mark, which is the apostrophe. So length 20 feet, and then just enter. When you enter, you get that line, and it wants to continue drawing lines. And now, go ahead and tap the left arrow key to constrain, like that. And now, along the green axis, I'm going to type in 10 feet. So 10, and then the foot mark, and enter. And like I said, you don't have to move your cursor down to that box. You just type away. So that's 10 feet. And now I want it to constrain to red axis. So tap the right arrow key, take it all the way over. Notice how it's constraining. And let's just practice this again. Type in 20 and then the foot mark and then enter. And then bring it down. And I don't need to type a value. I'm just going to let it snap to that endpoint and give that a click. It should let you click. There we go. All set. So you've created the surface. Now go ahead and tap the space bar. And now we're going to pull this up to a height. So go ahead and type P. Hover over that surface until it highlights. Give it one click. And then just move it in the direction that you want it to go. In this case, it's up. And we'll just go ahead and type in a value of 10 feet. So 10 feet and enter. So we now have a rectangular solid 20 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet high. And once you're done, you tap the space bar and then triple click on the objects. Triple click. They're called entities here, so I should refer to them that way. So triple click on any one of those entities. It creates, it selects them all, and then right click and make a group. Done. Let me show you what would happen if I did not make a group. I'm going to pan over here for a moment, like this. I'm going to draw a shape similar to that one real quick here, like this. I'm constraining. And then I'll give that a click. All right. And then I'll go ahead and pull that up like this. And now I will go ahead and draw another shape. And this shape, I'm going to do this. I'm going to draw here. I'm going to take it along the green axis there. Notice how I'm having it overlap on purpose. Constrain to the red axis over here. Constrain to the green axis there. Let it line up with that endpoint there. And then I'll give it one more click. And I have that shape. And interesting, this one drew it showing us the reverse face. If I look underneath, that's the other face. All right. Now, I'm going to push pull this up. So I type P for push pull. I'm going to take it up in this direction. And you can't really tell what it's doing, but watch this. If I actually go on the underside, look at what it's doing. It's push pulling, but it's not giving me the full shape. You see that? Because I never made a solid out of the first one. So I can take it up, let's say this height, and now tap the space bar. And now let's say I want to move this solid. Well, because I never made it a group, moving it is going to be a little tricky because if I triple click, it picks everything. So now they're joined, and that's not what I want. So that's where you have to be careful. So I'm going to undo, and to undo, I just come up over here to edit, undo, and that's the Control Z. So I'm going to tap Control Z again, Control Z again, again, and one more time. And now this time I will make a group. So I'm going to triple click, right click, make group. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did before, which is to draw my lines. And I'll start here. I'll take it straight back, constrain to green axis, and then constrain to red axis, constrain to green, and then close it out. And now if I push pull this surface up like this, I'll stop there. Notice, you see how it's not showing me an edge because they're not joined. So that's a nice sign, a good sign. And now if I tap the space bar and I click on this object and I decide to move it, I type M, I can move it any direction and notice how it moves freely and independent from the other solid there or the other set of objects. And then I'll take this group of entities, I'll triple click, right click, and I'm going to make a group out of that. And now if I move it, notice they move freely because they're individual groups. So groups are critical to modeling in SketchUp. And then I'm also noticing that it has a volume. If I tap the space bar, I click on this group, that also has a volume. So just keeping an eye on these things. All right. And then the last thing before we start to construct a formal drawing here, and that is I've been using the line, but you can also use the rectangle tool. So click on rectangle, and you can just draw a rectangle, any shape for now. And you'll notice with SketchUp, if I if I'm close to a square, it's going to give me a diagonal there, and it lets me know that that's a square. And I also believe it will allow me to do what's called the golden rectangle proportions, which is like 1.6. There we go, golden section. So that's kind of nice. I'll go ahead and give that a click. So it's a feature. Just know that. And then I can type P for push pull, raise this, and then always space bar, triple click, right click, and then make a group. All right. And then finally, since we've been making these rectangles, I want to show you a circle. So you just click on the icon for circle. And before you start finding the center anywhere, you'll notice in the bottom right corner, it says sides 24. I'm going to leave that alone for now. And I'm going to draw my circle right here. And any radius will work like this. And I'll click. And then I'll tap the space bar. I just want you to see something. It created that circular shape, but you'll notice these are segments. SketchUp doesn't construct a true circle. This is now 24 segments. It's like a polyline, 24 sided, not polyline, a polygon, a 24 sided polygon. So just keep that in mind. If you want more precision, you'll increase that value from 24 to anything you want. But this is how SketchUp constructs circles. And then if I push pull this up like this, you'll notice that it's showing me that it does have that nice rounded shape. And then I'll tap the space bar and then triple click, right click to make a group. And I hope you notice that before I made the group, let me undo that for a second. One moment, sorry. Okay, triple click. You see how there are these dashed lines here? These are actually hidden edges that SketchUp doesn't show us, but they're there. Um, and these are the segments that make up the cylinder. So just keep an eye on that or be mindful of it. And then right click, make a group, and then all set. And then go ahead and if you've been modeling all this, playing around, go ahead and just orbit, pan, zoom, just to get a nice feel for the interface. In the background over there, you see that's the horizon line. And I can almost stand like right, I'll put the eye level right there to match, I'm sorry, the horizon line match the eye level of that figure. So that's why it's kind of nice to have that figure there. And then orbit around. And you can orbit to the underside. So I would give myself some time to just draw some simple shapes and just orbit about them so that you feel comfortable doing that. And that will do it for the intro to SketchUp.